Today, we have Jackie Steinberg and Jimmy Williamson from Dartpoints to discuss reliable data center and cloud solutions. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Hi, guys. I see a lot of familiar names on the audience, so good to see everybody. Thank you so much for having us. Jackie Steinberg here. I am the channel chief at Dartpoints. I also have our lead solution architect with us, Jimmy Williamson, and he is he's more of the brain of the operation. So we'll get into what he does and what I do in a little bit. If you want to go to the next slide. Just to tell you a little bit about Dartpoints, we are not a new company. We've been in business for nearly 20 years. If you're not familiar with data center companies, it's space and power, it's real estate. We partner with technology solutions advisors like yourselves, with all the TSDs, and we really provide world-class data centers. So anything you can expect from a world-class data center is like SOC 2, Type 2 compliant facilities, multiple security points, badge, PIN, biometric access control, video surveillance, 24/7, 365 monitoring, lockable suites, all of the good things that you'd expect from data center companies. If you go to the next slide, please. So glad to report that we have now been in the channel for 2 years, and these are the tech service distributors, formerly known as master agents, that you are able to sell us via. So if you notice, it's all the major ones up there. There is one that you might notice it is not there, but we do have an NDA with them, and it's just now it's just a matter of time until we get that done. So really excited about that. Next slide, please. This is your channel team. We have historically had a direct sales force for nearly 20 years, and since the channel was integrated, we have now a lot of support for you. Starts with me, and you've got our VP of Sales, Monty Blight. He oversees the entire sales for Dartpoints. Jimmy here is on the call with us. He has a team of solution architects that he supports, and then we have 3 territories. Charles is in our Midwest territory. Mike Stokes is in the Southeast, and then Brian in the South Central. And then we also have a channel product liaison, Blake. Blake's really smart, and it's typically if we don't have something and we want to bring some product in that might work out for the solution, that's when I bring him or our CTO in, and we typically can make it work because we're very white glove. Next slide, please. So where are we? These are our 12 data centers. If you notice, we are not in major metros. We are 50 to 100 concentric circle miles outside of those areas. So for a lot of you, I know you're Kentucky, right? I think Robert's over there. We're right across the street in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're also Dublin, Ohio, Columbus, Indiana. That's one of our largest facilities at 87,000 square feet, and we have capacity. And then we're all over the Carolinas. We're Asheville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Spartanburg, Charleston, and Columbia. And yes, we understand that Charleston is not on the ocean, but that's all that fit in the map, the bubbles. And then our most recent acquisition of 3 new data centers, there are 2 in Baton Rouge and 1 in Shreveport, Louisiana. All right, next slide, please. And I'm going to pass this over to Jimmy. He's going to talk to you about our solutions and portfolio and everything we can offer.
Thank you, Jackie. Hey, good morning, everyone. Appreciate you letting us be here today to talk to you. So as Jackie said, so I'm Jimmy Williamson. I'm the solution architect for the channel. I also manage our solution architect team for the rest of the company. We actually have one SA in every region as well. So I have a group of folks that report to me and back me up to help support you all. Part of our role obviously is to help you when you're talking to your prospects and to your customers to gather the correct discovery that we need to do, technical discovery and solution discovery, to understand the pain point, understand the outcomes, and then make sure that we design a solution that's going to make sure that the outcome, whether that's a business outcome, risk reduction, whatever the outcome may be, make sure that we attain those. So I wanted to talk to you at kind of a high level about basically the 4 categories of services that we have. Some of these are sort of dependent upon the other, and they're add-on services. Some of these are really sold kind of standalone. I'm going to walk through these relatively quickly. And then obviously we can dive into any of these that you want at the end if there's some questions. But as Jackie said, we're a co-location and cloud company, specifically in as you saw, within the Midwest region, so Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio, down into South Carolina and Louisiana, and what we call our South Central region. So we do typically operate outside what we call Tier 1 or NFL cities, with a couple of exceptions, to try to bring these services to companies that are outside of that Tier 1 provider zone. So we're going to talk a little bit about data center, our cloud solutions, a little bit of managed services. Again, some of those can be sold standalone, some of them are add-ons, and then our network. And when we talk about that, this is enabling customers who are in our cloud or in our colocation to connect to wherever that may need to, whether that's within the Dartpoints data center network, whether that's to the internet, whether that's to carriers that are in our carrier suites, or that is to other cloud providers, whether that be SaaS providers, hyperscale providers, through access to cloud on-ramps. Colocation services. So as Jackie mentioned, what we want to do is try to bring, kind of world-class data center to these smaller markets. So we have 11 facilities ranging in size from about 5,000 square feet to the smallest, to 80,000 square feet as the largest. All of them provide a lot of the same level of service from resiliency. So if you're familiar with the Uptime Institute and their tier rating for data centers, 1 being, least reliable, 4 being the most secure and reliable that exists, we build ours to tier 3 or better. Tier 4 data centers have some requirements that we can't meet around having multiple different utility providers. So most of our locations, we have connectivity to multiple different substations, but there's a single utility provider, Duke Energy, for most of ours, a lot of different ones in different markets, but there's typically 1 there. So we build ours to tier 3. So that is all making sure that everything is built to an N+1 standard. We can handle a failure of any component with no degradation of service, whether that's from maintenance or any other issues. So we have redundant UPS, HVAC controls, diesel generators, utility service feeds, fire suppression systems. And from a security aspect, we follow what's called the SOC 2 Type 2, so that's service or organizational control, that basically are third-party audited to make sure that we're following best practice and security practices for the industry. Not only do we say that and test that we do it, but we're audited to make sure. That means all data centers have multi-factor access, all have security cameras, all are staffed 24/7 with our network operations center. And customers can access anything from a quarter cabinet up to an entire suite, depending on what their needs. And all of those are 24/7 access to the customer, and all of those are lockable cabinets and cages. From a internet service connection, so this is, I'll show you guys a little picture of this here in a minute, but part of what we provide is a very robust, what we call DCI, or data center interconnect network, as well as connectivity to tier 1 internet service providers and cloud on-ramps. So our data centers basically all have what we call local transit providers that are providers within that region, as well as connectivity into larger tier 1 providers at major pairing points in Ashburn, Virginia, Atlanta, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina, and some other areas. We do provide denial of service protection for all our customers who subscribe to our own internet services. So we act as an ISP for about 75% of our customers that are in our data centers, but we also provide a huge number of different carriers within our what we call a carrier hotel, or demarcation points within the data centers, to allow people to connect to whatever provider is currently on net. And that ranges from a minimum of about 4 or 5 in some of our smaller data centers, up to about 12 to 15 in some of our larger data centers. This is kind of a little bit of a picture of like where we're at. You'll notice here that we use airport codes to kind of designate our location. So CVG for Cincinnati, Ohio. So those are the locations of all of our existing data centers. You'll see that the blue lines sort of designate our backbone connections. So those are carrier waves or Ethernet waves that we have between the data centers that help build out our transport network. And the small globes that you see, those are all of our peering locations. So what you'll notice from this is very robust from a connectivity standpoint. High-speed connectivity is something that is really important to our customers. You'll notice that there is no data center that doesn't have at least 2 peering points connected to it, including those local transit providers. Cloud services, so we can provide, when we talk cloud, a lot of this is our bread and butter. It's around infrastructure as a service. So providing, infrastructure for customers to consume, on demand as needed, to remove the burden of them having to run that infrastructure. We can deliver that in a lot of different ways, whether that's a dedicated private cloud, what we call our multi-tenant cloud that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute, or disaster recovery. And we also can deliver those as a hybrid model. That can be a mixture of our public and private, or private with a public component being connected either in Azure or AWS or GCP. Kind of the core of our cloud services is around a architecture we call Enterprise Flex Cloud. So this is a architecture that we developed using kind of best of breed services, best of breed vendors to deliver infrastructure as a service. So this basically consumptive-based resources, so the ability to run virtualized workloads within a cloud environment. I'm not going to go through all the functionality here, but these are all the things we provide just as a base layer of services for that model. And it can be delivered in all of those ways we just talked about. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the case study at the end, but we can deliver this as what we call a public solution. So multi-tenant shared hardware, where you're really buying a pool of resources to use each month for running your workloads, to anything that is a mixture of hybrid, where you maybe still have some colocation, you're running some of your own workloads, you want some place to be able to burst into, or to run some specialized workloads, we can do that as well, or something that's completely private and dedicated to a specific customer. We also have disaster recovery in kind of 2 different flavors. So the one on the right I'll kind of talk about is our co-located disaster recovery. So think about this as it is what I kind of call roll your own, for lack of a better term, where we're providing a co-location, network services, and connectivity. The customer is really using their own equipment and IT service staff to provide their own disaster recovery. So we're an enabler. For the recovery cloud, that's really disaster recovery as a service, where we're basically removing that risk from the customer. We're providing this as a consumptive-based white glove service, where we're replicating those workloads, whether it's from hyperscale cloud, customer co-location on a Hyper-V or VMware, or even our own cloud services, and we're replicating those to a dedicated cloud infrastructure using that Enterprise Flex Cloud architecture. And we do have some services that are kind of included in that. So part of this is near-time replication. So if you're familiar with your recovery point objective, how far behind is your DR site to your production site? We typically run 2 to 4 minutes, but we provide a 1-hour RPO around that as a target SLA. And then a recovery time objective is 4 hours or less for recovering that environment. Again, it's kind of replicating that VMware, Hyper-V, or cloud-based environment into our cloud. Part of the add-on service to that, or the service that's included this, but part of what's in our DR as a service offering is we do what's called runbook development. So we will go through with the customer as part of onboarding, help develop a runbook that we maintain with the customer that is executed during a DR event or a test. And then if a customer needs to declare an emergency, it's a simple call 1-800 number, declare a disaster. An engineering team works with that customer using that run book validate that, or to make sure that all the steps, validated steps that were created during onboarding or during DR tests are followed, and that we have a successful recovery. And then part of what we do is we include no extra cost, no declaration fee. We include 2 DR tests per year for every customer to make sure that they are going through and testing DR and have confidence that when it's time to execute that event, if it ever comes to that, they have the ability to do it. We also provide some reporting that allows them to show to their executive team or any other stakeholders that not only do they have a DR plan, they also have a successful DR test that can be reported. Real quickly, I'm just going to talk about some services that we have in here, and then there's one more I want to mention. So some of these are things we talked about: DR as a service, colocation DR. We also, for our cloud and colocation customers, can provide our next-gen firewall. So that is some of these next generation services around network antivirus, IPS, web filtering, as an add-on service to any of our customers, as well as managed backup. And that could be managed backup of their virtualized workloads that are running in our cloud, as well as workloads running on premises or their Office 365 or Microsoft 365 environments. We can do all of those as a managed service. And I talked a little bit about cloud on-ramps. Our multi-cloud connector is basically what we call our cloud on-ramp solution. So this is the ability, basically through a software-defined network, to quickly and easily connect into hyperscale providers. So if you typically think about how long it takes to stand up, for example, an Azure Express Route circuit, that could often be, weeks or months, depending on the carrier that you're working with and where you're trying to do it. We can typically spin that up in 5 days. And once it's up and running, we can allow them to have flexible capacity to increase the size of those circuits from 50 meg to 5 gigs within basically a matter of hours. So those are some kind of services that we add on to some of our core services. And then there's one more I want to mention. I want to be cognizant of time. I know I've been talking for a while, which is we launched the end of 2022. That's our managed detection and response solution. So this can be sold as an add-on service or completely standalone. So this is a Dartpoints managed combined, if you're familiar with managed detection and response and endpoint detection and response. This is a combined solution to give visibility across endpoints, cloud services, Dartpoint services, basically anything that we can connect into to get them a full visibility into threat detection, monitoring, and where we're actually and also playbook automation, which is some automated responses, so that we can kind of have full visibility into what's going on in their environment, help them reduce that time to detection and time to response for any threats or events that may happen from a security standpoint. We've had a lot of customers who have been interested in this. We've had quite a few large deployments. This is actually it's a Dartpoints managed service. It is powered by Red Canary, if you're familiar with that platform, and SentinelOne. Kind of those are the two vendors we're using to help provide the platform, but it is a Dartpoints managed service that's being delivered to the customer. One thing I do want to mention, and I'll post a link to this at the end. This was a case study we did for the University of South Carolina. I know there's people here from all over the country. So University of South Carolina is the largest public university in South Carolina, about 34,000 students, one of the #1 international business programs in the country. They were looking to completely change their infrastructure and their way of supporting their customers. So we deployed for them what we call the software-defined data center. So that's enterprise plus cloud architecture as a multi-tenant cloud solution dedicated to the University of South Carolina, where the entire hardware was dedicated to the university, but we created multiple tenants within that platform that basically represented all of their different business units or academic units, where they could actually start doing chargebacks, offloading some of the management responsibility, deployment responsibility to those departments while still maintaining control as a centralized IT department. We did that for their production environment in our Columbia data center, deployed that cloud solution, and actually created a completely separate DR environment that can provide light performance in our Greenville data center, and created an entire DR plan for them. So not only changed, infrastructure, but also changed the way that they could, IT service operations were performed. And I'll post a link to that at the end of this. That is all I had. I know I talked for a long time, so I'm going to stop here and maybe turn it back over.
Jimmy, I see that we have some questions in the chat. The first one was, who are your biggest competitors and what are your unique advantages over them? I'll let Jimmy answer who our competitors are. But I can tell you guys, the white glove support that Dartpoints offers, it's during sales process, includes architecture, provisioning, through the deployment, through implementation, just to make sure that we ensure a smooth onboarding and then ongoing. So it makes us very sticky. Jimmy, if you want to respond to the other two.
Sure.
And I will tell you guys, sometimes, most of the time we go up against Expedient and Flex Central. That's probably what I would consider our biggest competitors.
Yeah, and I would say I would agree with Jackie. The biggest advantage I think we have is certainly locations can be specific for some of the colocation services. So I think we're located in areas where those competitors may not be. The second is we make support and consultation, very easy. So, for example, I have direct access to our tier 3 or level 3 engineers. Customers call in support. There's no additional cost for that. If they need to escalate to an engineer immediately, that can happen as well. So we try to really, truly partner with our customers and are small enough and I think agile enough that we can make sure they have access to the resources that they need. So if we're working with a mutual customer, we need to pull in, for example, our director of network engineering. He spent 15 years in working for a carrier. He's been at Dartpoints for 20 years. Huge wealth of knowledge. That's something we can very easily do because we are at the size where those resources can be readily accessible. And I think from a competitor standpoint, the two you just mentioned, especially in our region, are the ones we run into the most.
And another question, is the managed backup offered to any size customer?
It is. So there's the kind of two flavors of that. So one is managed backup as an add-on to customers who are running in our cloud environment. No matter how that's deployed. We also can do managed backup for on-premises. There probably, I would say, is, from a financial cost, I would probably say from a workload perspective, if you're running less than about 20 to 25 virtual machines workloads, it may not be quite cost effective, but it's certainly doable. So we have probably our smallest deployment for managed backup is probably 25 to 30 workloads. Our largest is about 3,000 to 4,000, and that's in North America, China, India, so large global footprint company.
The next question. So it would need to be a burstable circuit. I think this is when you were talking about our network.
Yes. So the answer is when we deploy service, a DIA, direct internet, or DCI service, that can be burstable or fixed. It's up to the customer. By default, it is a burstable circuit, and billing is based on 95th percentile, if you're familiar with that. For our multi-cloud connector, which is the cloud on-ramp solution, those are typically ordered as fixed sizes. For example, 50, 150 meg, 1 gig, 2 gig, 5 gig, based on what's needed. So they're not burstable, but we do have the ability to scale those up or down based on customer need. There are some limitations on whether you can do that on the fly with no interruption to operations, or whether that needs to be a planned maintenance item because there's going to be an interruption. And those are typically dictated by the hyperscale provider you're connecting to an Azure versus an AWS or a GCP.
The next question, what protocols and standards do you follow for data security and compliance, like GDPR, HIPAA,
Yep.
et cetera?
So it is SOC 2, type 2 that we follow for security and compliance. And again, the type 2 means that we are audited on a yearly basis. We do have one data center that has PCI certification in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But SOC 2 type 2 is what we do. We have specifically gotten certified for GDPR or HIPAA. I know a lot of those controls are applied to multiple standards or multiple certification levels, but it's SOC 2 type 2 for us.
All right, and then it looks like another question. What industry certifications does your data center hold?
Same. SOC 2 type 2 is our governing compliance for all of our data centers. I think it's very similar to ISO 27001.
Yep, that's the one in there. And the SSAE 18. That was another question if that's in there.